My team and I have helped hundreds of home buyers over the last 10 years in the Northern Virginia market purchase a property. So in this video, I'm gonna go over the top 10 do's and don'ts when it comes to purchasing a property in Northern Virginia. So number one is that you wanna have a good local lender with good reviews. You'd be shocked at how many times a lender can actually mess up the deal. You think it would just be a simple thing. Hey, here's my, income, taxes, that kind of thing. You'd be shocked at how many times lenders can actually mess up the deal. And it gets to like a week before closing and all of a sudden the lender's like, hey, we need another week. Hey, we need more documents. Or in some cases, they might say, hey, we can't even do this loan. And then you as the buyer are completely screwed because you're a few days away from closing and you're gonna be in default of the contract. You could lose your earnest money deposit, or you might have to ask for an extension, which is gonna cost you more money. And you might actually lose your dream house because of a bad lender. I had a buyer recently, he was a military buyer, and he had gotten referred to this company that I guess did a lot of VA loans. And so it's like, okay, great. We work with a lot of VA buyers. And just as doing my own due diligence as a buyer's agent, as a real estate agent, I looked up this company, and basically all of their reviews were like terrible. They were like 2 out of 10. Like the last 3 reviews were like, whatever you do, do not use this company. This was the worst experience I've ever had. All the reviews were like that. And I told him, I'm like, look, we can use them, but I just want to make you aware that this company does not get good reviews. I sent him to my lender. It's like, look at my lender's reviews, 5-star reviews. You're going to be getting a similar, maybe even a better rate. He's going to respond. You can call, text, email him anytime. So we ended up switching to my lender, and it was a much better experience. But you also want a good lender, not just for your own sake, just to have it be a smooth experience. But when it comes to multiple offer scenarios, which we'll talk about later on in this video, you want a lender that's going to call the listing agent and say, look, Bill is super well qualified, and also say, hey, look, we can close this quickly. A lot of lenders can't even close in 30 days. So you want a lender to be make your offer as competitive as possible. So for example, my lender is going to call the listing agent. My lender is also going to, close, maybe in 21 days or, as soon as humanly possible. And you also want a lender that's going to be responsive. There was a deal recently where they submitted an offer and their lender letter was like half of what the offer was. So let's say the asking price is 1.5. They submitted a lender letter for like $750,000. And we're like, what are we going to do with this? And we called the lender, we texted, we emailed. He didn't respond for like 3 days. And by that time, we had already gotten like 5 offers and went with a different offer. But if that lender had responded and say, oh yeah, here's the updated lender letter, they might have actually gotten that deal. But they basically lost the deal because their lender was completely unresponsive and didn't even have an updated lender letter. And another thing a good lender is gonna do is they're gonna get you fully approved and underwritten. So a lot of lenders might just give you a pre-qualification or a pre-approval letter. You just send them a few documents. A good local lender, for example, the one on my team, they're gonna get you fully underwritten so that you can close even faster. Because in this competitive Northern Virginia market, you want every possible advantage going your way. So that's just one of the many reasons why you should use a good local lender. The next thing you need to do is you do need to be prepared to move quickly. In this Northern Virginia market, whether you're in Clarendon or Manassas, properties can still get multiple offers and sell quickly. It's not uncommon to see a property hit the market, let's say on a Wednesday or Thursday, and then let's say an open house is scheduled for Sunday. Well, you might think, hey, we're just gonna wait to the open house. Why would they cancel the open house? It should be a popular property. Sometimes they get an incredible offer before the open house and the open house gets canceled. I see it happen all the time. Like me, myself personally, I would always recommend if I was, the listing agent to wait until the end of the open house and then set a Monday or Tuesday deadline. But sometimes people might just submit a really strong offer and the seller's like, wow, this is just, I don't want to wait any longer. This is the offer I was looking for, kind of thing. So if you're out there tracking the market, looking at different houses and your dream property pops up, you need to go see that property the same day. And if you work with my team, we can get you out there. We can show you a house basically in an hour. It might not be myself showing it, but we have different agents that can get you into the house and submit a strong offer if it's something you want to see. It's crazy to me, these agents that aren't able to get their clients into properties, because that window of time for your dream house might only be a very short window before it gets 5 offers or that kind of thing. And it's funny because I'm in these different real estate groups and that kind of thing. And I remember this agent, I think he was DC or Maryland. He posted something, I think he was kind of frustrated. He was like, it's so annoying how Virginia real estate agents, they always cancel their open house, and it's always this sense of urgency, and you have to submit the offer by 8 p.m. on a Saturday night. And it's yeah, we're not in Maryland, we're not in Wheaton. These properties sell quickly. You have to submit a strong offer ASAP. Yeah, I wish there wasn't such a sense of urgency, but sometimes with these hot Northern Virginia properties, they don't last very long, and you have to get your offer in ASAP. And that's why it's important to have your lender letter fully underwritten, so you can just shoot it out there, get your offer in, and you might have to see that property 4 or 5 p.m. on a Saturday and then submit the offer by 6, 7, 8 p.m. that same night. That's just the reality of the market when there's low inventory. And don't even get me started on Maryland agents. I think there could be a whole video just based on Maryland agents, the crazy stuff you see when you get to different parts of Maryland. But another point I want to make about moving quickly is we had this one deal, it was in Alexandria, and they actually had another offer on the table, and they were going to be making a decision that night. And we were able to not only show the house, but I called my home inspector. We did a walk and talk home inspection to make sure the house didn't have any big issues. And then it turned out the house was mostly fine. You know, there's always a little bit of repairs and updates you can do, but there was no big issues. So then we made our offer that same day without a home inspection contingency, thereby beating that other offer who still had the home inspection contingency. So we were able to get in the house, do a home inspection, and make an excellent offer all within like basically an afternoon or an evening. And then they chose our offer and we got them their dream house. And that brings me to the next do. So you do need to be prepared for multiple offers. If you're tracking the market and you see an excellent house, chances are other people have seen that house as well. Chances are they're going to be looking at it. You know, I've done showings before where there's multiple other agents showing the same property. Or for example, I'm showing a house today over near Great Falls and it already has 2 offers. But if we like it, we might make a more competitive offer. And some of the things we do in competitive offers are we do like pre-inspections, or we might waive a home inspection in some cases. Obviously that's riskier, but we might do like a walk and talk home inspection where a home inspector goes in there for an hour, make sure there's no major issues. And then if the house checks out, we'll make our offer non-contingent on a home inspection. Or another thing we do is escalation clauses. So we'll say, okay, we'll pay $1 million up to 1.1 in $10,000 increments. And the seller can't just go with your ultimate highest offer. They would have to show that another offer triggered your, escalation price. And then another thing we do is we waive contingencies. So if your local lender is like, hey, these buyers are super well qualified, we can waive the financing contingency, we can waive the appraisal contingency. We'll try to waive as many contingencies as possible so long as like the property checks out. Let's say all the houses in this one neighborhood sell for $1 million and then you offer 1.2 with no appraisal contingency. Obviously that could be a bit risky. The appraiser's going to say, well, I don't think this house is worth 1.2. It might be a little bit nicer, but everything else has sold for 1 million. So in that scenario, we would say, okay, we can do like an appraisal gap contingency where it says like we're willing to pay up to $25,000 of the difference between the appraised price and our escalated price. Or sometimes if a buyer just loves the property and has a lot of cash, or maybe they're putting a lot of money down as a down payment, we might say, hey, we're going to waive the appraisal contingency, knowing that it might only appraise for $1 million. We're paying 1.1, but we're okay with that. And another thing we do to prepare for these multiple offer scenarios is my team and I, as agents, we find out from the listing agent, hey, what's the seller's ideal closing scenario? And then we try to tailor our offer around that. And we also try to find out how many other offers they have. If there's 5 other offers and you really want the property, our offer strategy is going to be much different than if they just have one other offer that's slightly above asking price. And even when we do all these different things to make our offer competitive, it's not a guarantee that you're going to get the property. Sometimes other agents are savvy and they're doing escalation clauses, they're waiving contingencies, they're paying above asking price, they're closing quickly, they have a local lender as well. So in this market, you don't want to get emotionally attached to a property. It might take, if you're in a super competitive price range in a super competitive neighborhood, it might take like 3 or 4 offers before you get one under contract. And again, that's why you need to move quickly, have a good local agent like my team and I, have a good local lender. You want to have every possible factor going your way, every advantage possible. Don't think that just any agent, any lender, any title company can get you to the closing line, any home inspector for that matter. You want to have basically like 5-star resources in every category of the home buying process. Most people are not buying houses, once every year or two. Actually, I do have a few clients that do buy a house every year. But with my team, we try to be 5-star agent, super responsive. You call or text us right now, we are going to respond quickly. Same with our lender, same with our title company, same with our home inspector. If you look up our team, if you look up our home inspectors, our lenders, everybody has 5 stars, because I've seen it happen too often where people try to take a shortcut and maybe try to use the cheapest company, and maybe they don't have the best reviews, and I've seen it more often than not can sabotage the whole deal. Hey, real quick, 10 seconds, it's Jeff here. So if you're looking to buy in the Northern Virginia area, reach out to my team and I below. We get calls, texts, emails every single day from people just like you looking to make a move to the Northern Virginia area, and we would love to assist you. Another don't I want to talk about, and I'll tell you a quick story as well, is don't ignore commuting times. Like, that should sound obvious to most people, like wherever you're gonna live, okay, how long is the commute gonna be? Well, I've seen it plenty of times where, we're evaluating a deal. And I remember this one house, it had just sold like maybe 6 months ago or 12 months ago. And I asked the listing agent, I was like, why are they selling so quickly? Because the house looked great. It didn't look like any type of like distressed scenario. And they told me that the home buyers had bought it, I think from like Germany. And it was a townhouse, I think in like Ashburn, but their job was in Alexandria. So if we pull up Google Maps right now and we look up the commuting time from Ashburn to Alexandria, obviously it depends what part of Alexandria, but that could easily be over an hour commute just one way. So they might have been spending 3 hours on the road every single day. I mean, you can get a flight to Boston in like 45 minutes. I think you can fly to Cancun. I'm booking a flight to Cancun soon because I want a free trip, but I think that's like a 3 or 4 hour flight. So they were spending like weeks and months of their life just on the road, just commuting. So you do want to like definitely do a lot of research, and obviously rely on your agent as well, but do your own research too, as how are you going to commute and what distance is that commute going to be. I posted this video about this Centerville house that I was touring, an incredible house. It was like over 12,000 square feet. And someone was like, oh, that's just 30 minutes to downtown DC. And then someone in the comments was like, that's 30 minutes from downtown DC if you leave the Key Bridge at 2:45 in the morning on a weekday and like there's no traffic at all. But obviously during the week, during rush hour, that could easily be, an hour or maybe even longer than that. So do not ignore commuting times. And just talking about Centerville, I had a buddy that moved out to Centerville. I'm living in Arlington at the time. When he moved out to Centerville, we basically didn't see each other too often after that. Like, we're still cool now. He just moved back to DC. But that's a big distance. Centerville is great because you have a lot of restaurants out there. You get more space. You can get a big house. But if you're in Centerville, don't think you're going to be in Arlington or DC all the time. That is a very long drive. Next up, do budget for expenses. So even if you're buying like a brand new house, there's always things you're going to want to do, or maybe every now and then something might break. But a lot of these houses in Northern Virginia, especially if you're in like Arlington, Alexandria, Falls Church areas, they might be houses built in the 1940s. If you're in Alexandria, it might quite literally be like the 1800s. I remember I showed George Washington's brother's carriage house that was for sale for like $1 million. And that was like, whatever, 1700s, 1800s. But for the most part, let's say a house in the 1950s or around that age, they're gonna need repairs. You might have to replace a main sewer pipe. The roof, the roof has probably been replaced since the 1950s, but it might have not been replaced within the last 20 years. So anytime you're buying an older house, you need to have like a slush fund available for repairs. Anytime you're buying any type of property, you should always have like a 6-month emergency fund, just as a general rule of thumb for personal finance. But old houses obviously always need more work. And one thing my team and I, we do as agents is we always try to find out, what major repairs has the seller done. So for example, we just bought this house in Falls Church, and the seller had a detailed booklet of every single repair they did. They were like, okay, in 2015, we replaced the main sewer line for $21,000. In 2011, we did this vinyl flooring. In 2022, we did the windows and it cost this much. And it was so detailed and broken down and it was incredible. They might have spent like over $100 grand. And we might have not known that going in, but I felt much more comfortable being like, wow, this person not only kept detailed records, but they've invested like $100,000 into this smaller property. So before you make your offer, you should have a pretty good idea. Sometimes they don't always know for sure. Maybe they haven't owned the house or inherited it or whatever it might be. But you should have a pretty good idea of like the repairs that they've done or future repairs that might need to be done. And in terms of future resale value, I think it's a great idea to keep a booklet like this lady had, because it definitely helps. You can say, look, they've spent $50,000 doing this, this, and this, and that gives a buyer a lot of reassurance when it comes to purchasing a property. Next up, don't forget to look at a property's history. So your agent, you can do this too, but your agent, myself, my team and I, we would do this for you. We would look at the property history, look at the last 10, 20, 30 years. There's this one house in Arlington, I swear it sells every single year. It's on a busier road. I don't know if it's haunted or just because it's on a busier road, but every single year this house is for sale. And I'm like, that's kind of a red flag. If I was advising a buyer, I'd be like, there's something going on here. Now, granted, there's a price for everything. I would buy that house at the right price. I don't know what price, it would have to be pretty low. But that's something you want to keep in mind. If a house sells every single year or every few years, probably a little bit of a red flag. It's okay if like a property, sometimes life happens and people have to sell after a year or two, job transfer, whatever it might be. But if you see like a history of like every 2 years the property sells, it might be a bit of a red flag. And it's also good to look at a property's history, because sometimes you'll find out, hey, in 2018 it mentions a brand new roof, or in 2012 it mentions, they did this addition or whatever it might be. You can find out a lot of detailed information by looking at the previous property description, so that when you make your offer, you have a very good like picture and idea of the house. Next up, don't just rely on photos. I think in the DMV area here, we have some incredible real estate photographers, because sometimes they make these small houses look incredible. And sometimes when you see them in person, they are incredible, but sometimes the photos can lie. And sometimes it's the opposite too. I always tell people, if a house kind of checks a lot of your criteria, but might have bad photos, it's still worth it, because I've seen it where the house has terrible photos, but then you go there in person, you're like, wow, this house is actually pretty incredible. Usually it's the opposite way around, where the house looks incredible in photos. Then when you get there, it's okay, but it's not as nice as you thought it was. So if you're out of town, or if you're an overseas buyer, what we always recommend is, have a friend or family member meet us at the house so they can give you their opinion. Or the easiest thing is to do a video tour. Usually the video tours can give you a much better idea. It basically feels like you're right there in the house and can give you a better idea of the floor plans, the layout, the size, everything like that. So if you can't see the house in person, that's totally fine. We have people buy houses all the time without actually stepping foot in the property. But at the very least, have somebody meet us there or do a video tour. Next up, do drive the neighborhood if you can. Now, obviously, Google Street Maps is great. You can basically do a virtual driving tour there. I mean, the best case scenario is actually going there in person. But you want to know like what's nearby. Is there a park nearby? Is there a good restaurant nearby? Is there a power plant? A liquor store? You want to know like the good and bad about what's near you. Sometimes stuff is not advertised in the listing, especially if it's something bad. It might not be advertised in the listing. And sometimes even if it's like something good, sometimes it's just left out and you're like, wow, I didn't know there was like a swimming pool, a block away. But you want to get a good sense. I would grab some coffee, do a virtual Google Maps tour. Usually those are fairly well updated. Ideally, you just go there in person, just drive around the neighborhood, see what's going on, maybe even drive there at night. I know people do that sometimes if they're not quite sure about the neighborhood, but that'll give you a very good sense of like the vibe and what's going on. We had somebody buy a property or almost buy a property, and then there was like some type of homeless shelter a block or two away, and they didn't want to buy a property like right next to a homeless shelter. So always drive the neighborhood. Next up, do get a property survey. So a property survey is basically like once you're under contract, the title company will ask you if you want to get a survey of your property done. And that's basically just like a boundary outline of, what your land is basically. And most of the time there's not going to be any surprises, but every now and then, especially if you're buying like a big piece of land, or even if you're buying any type of property that has any type of backyard or front yard, we strongly recommend a property survey. I can tell you a couple of stories, and title companies could tell you so many stories about why it's a good idea to get a property survey. But there was this one house in Arlington where I think it had been abandoned for like 5 or 10 years, and the neighbor was like a super shady person. And what they had done is they had started parking their vehicle on the vacant property's driveway. And there was some like obscure law in Virginia where if they did that for like a certain amount of years, they could then basically file some type of ownership claim for that. So when it came time to sell that property, like the owner didn't actually own their own driveway. And this was actually disclosed. It was kind of an unusual scenario, but that's the type of thing that you can find out in a property survey. I remember another house in Arlington where they had this driveway, and then it turned out after doing the survey that their driveway was only like half of what they thought their driveway was. So you couldn't even fit a car in their driveway if they went strictly by the survey of the property. And something like that would drastically affect like the marketability of the home. And you don't want to buy a property and then find out later that you don't even actually own your own driveway. Or another time, I think it was a house out in Falls Church, someone had built an actual swimming pool, but it was on the neighbor's land. So someone thought they were buying a swimming pool, or maybe it was like vice versa, but there was basically a swimming pool that they were not aware of that was now like on their neighbor's property. So always get a survey, even if you're just buying a townhouse. The only time you wouldn't get a survey is if you're buying a condo and like there's no type of grass space whatsoever. So there you have it, the do's and don'ts of buying a property in Northern Virginia. And reach out to my team and I below. We would love to assist you if you're thinking about buying or selling in the Northern Virginia area.